Hello everyone. Today we are discussing a very meaningful book called Loss Adjustment. This is a nonfiction work by Linda Collins, a New Zealander working in Singapore as a journalist. Her daughter, on April 14, 2014, committed suicide by jumping from a building. The story begins with time to get up. On that morning at 6:45, as per usual, the child should have been awake. The mother had prepared breakfast, but when the time came, she found her 17-year-old daughter Victoria was missing. She went to check her room, but no one was there. After searching the entire apartment, there was still no sign of her. The author and her husband began to panic, unsure of where their child had gone. They wondered if Victoria had suddenly gone out for a run or was doing something else. In their frantic search, the author suddenly remembered a dream she had that morning. In the dream, she saw her daughter flying up into the sky saying, "I'm free. You're free too." Just then, accompanied by the sound of a motorcycle, their community security guard Mohan knocked on the door. Without saying a word, he was already crying and told them, "Come with me, something has happened," leading them to the scene. The car stopped on the other side of the hill, near an apartment building facing tropical rosewood, fragrant ash trees, and pink and white variegated leaf flowers. A crowd had gathered below the apartment, consisting of Singaporeans of all ages and young Filipino maids crying in each other's arms. Some police officers were on motorcycles, while others stood nearby taking notes or making calls. Yellow warning tape separated the crowd from the object of their concern. She lay on her back with her arms crossed behind her head on the light yellow cement path, leading from the first-floor parking lot to the lobby, her face devoid of color. Her eyes were tightly closed, appearing peaceful yet filled with regret. Her neck was tilted, and one arm was twisted in a strange manner. I felt overwhelmed, as if some precious treasure had vanished into thin air. A soul had soared away, leaving behind a body that looked like my daughter, but it couldn't possibly be her. My stomach churned, and I quickened my pace towards the body. The police stopped me, firmly telling me to wait for the inspector. Malcolm was sobbing and choking, repeatedly saying, "No, no, no, please, Victoria." And then he struggled to break free. He rushed to Victoria's side, thank God, crying and kissing her face, only to be pulled away by an officer. Malcolm was Victoria's father, but he and Linda had not married. They had been cohabiting for over 20 years without tying the knot. The police set up a small blue tent to cover the body. How I wished Victoria could stand up and say, "You've been fooled. It's time to camp out." This was the scene of the incident. I hoped that somewhere there was a note, a message written for us. Later, I indeed found a small yellow sticky note in Victoria's handbag, neatly written in small letters. "I don't want to become a vegetable." The room was empty, with only Malcolm and me slumped on the sofa, trembling and sobbing. Occasionally we looked up, dazed and in disbelief, staring at each other. The police first needed to rule out any suspicions, so they took all of Victoria's personal items, including her diary and computer, to eliminate the possibility of foul play. Then they stayed at the house, but they couldn't just sit there crying. They had to tidy up. While cleaning the house, the author came across a t-shirt that Victoria had worn, but not yet washed. Picking it up, she could smell Victoria's scent. She immediately placed it in a sealed plastic bag, so she could take it out and smell it whenever she thought of Victoria. For hours later, they embraced each other and began sending emails to notify family, colleagues, and friends. Many colleagues and friends came to help. They also needed to do one more thing: go to the morgue to identify Victoria's body, a necessary process. Being New Zealanders, they were accompanied by Susan, the consular advisor from the New Zealand High Commission, to identify the body. We stepped into the glass porch, and through the glass on the left, I saw a pair of stiff arms raised, clenched fists as if protesting in anger. I saw a pair of blue-gray eyes wide open in a daze. I also saw freckles, light brown spots on porcelain white skin. The glass separating us created an illusion of a screen. I was merely an observer, watching the event unfold. This wasn't real. The being on the gurney resembled a small bird lying on its back, its claws curled tightly, dead on the floor of its cage. "Are you sure this person is Victoria Sky Pringle McLeod?" "Yes," a voice from somewhere within me answered without hesitation. Susan squeezed my hand. They lived in Singapore, so they had to hold a Singaporean-style funeral for Victoria. She had to harden her heart to dress her daughter. I can't remember what I dressed Victoria in, but I do remember gathering a few outfits, taking some hair accessories and cosmetics from her vanity. I also don't quite remember how I washed her long, fine hair, straightening each strand until it was dry. My movements were gentle, filled with longing and reluctance, and I kissed her lifeless cheeks several times. The Singaporean-style funeral lasts 3 days, during which people can come to say goodbye to Victoria. They received wreaths, flower baskets, and many monetary gifts. As Westerners, they found it strange that people would give money at a funeral. Later, they realized that this Chinese cultural practice made sense, as the total funeral expenses exceeded $15,000, and their own funds were insufficient. They needed help from others.